Why was everyone staring? She felt the weight of their eyes before she even touched the ground. The air at Fob Kestrel was razor-thin, like breathing through broken glass. Each inhale burned, each exhale reminded her body of what it had lost and what it still refused to surrender. The rotors of the Chinook had barely stopped spinning when Anna Sharma stepped down the ramp, her right leg dragging a fraction too long behind the left, a sound of grit, metal, and determination. Two solid thuds. One faint scrape. A rhythm she knew better than her own heartbeat. She didn't use a cane here. Out there in the quiet, polite streets of home, yes, it helped her blend into normalcy. But here on the roof of the world, a cane was a confession, a weakness, a signal that the mountain could smell from miles away. The young rangers standing by the landing pad watched her with a smirk sharp enough to cut air. They were built from confidence and caffeine, lean, precise, hardened by altitude and repetition. One of them nudged another, their laughter quick and cruel, carried easily on the wind. "Look what the cat dragged in," said Sergeant Diaz, his voice half amused, half challenging. "Recruiting from the VA hospital now." The others snickered. Anna didn't flinch, she kept walking. Her boots bit into gravel, crunch, crunch, slide. The smell of diesel and cold iron filled her lungs. Above, the mountains loomed like silent judges, unbothered by pride or pain. She learned to move through ridicule the same way she moved through pain, not ignoring it, but letting it pass through. Pain was information. Mockery was background noise. She reached the command post, a low prefab building ringed by antennas and sandbags, and walked straight through the door without acknowledging a single one of them. Inside, the hum of electronics met the stale smell of burned coffee and stress. Behind a glowing tactical map stood Colonel Madsen, a man whose posture alone screamed command authority. His face was weathered, etched with the kind of lines you earn from years of sand, loss, and impossible decisions. He didn't greet her. He evaluated her, the way one sizes up a malfunctioning weapon before deciding whether to fix it or toss it aside. "Miss Sharma," he said. The Ms. was deliberate, a wedge, a reminder that she wasn't military anymore. "You're the new civilian trainer, forward observation." "Yes, sir," she answered, calm, measured. His pale blue eyes were glacial. "This isn't a classroom at Fort Huachuca. My men operate at the sharp end. They need trainers who can keep pace." The implication hung there like smoke, and you can't. Anna's face remained neutral, the same controlled expression that had gotten her through every evaluation since the blast, the one that left her right side threaded with titanium. Madsen continued, leaning closer over the map. "Last civilian augmentation I had was a retired first sergeant. Thought he could still run a 6-minute mile. Blew his knee on day 1. Medevac. Waste of time. Waste of air." Silence. He wanted protest. She gave him none. Behind them the door clanged open. Diaz entered with his corporal, Levin, pretending to fetch batteries but obviously eavesdropping. Their smirks hadn't faded. Madsen didn't look at them. "Sergeant Diaz," he said, "Ms. Sharma will be attached to your unit for observation. She's here to advise on long-range surveillance techniques." "Yes, sir," Diaz replied, half grinning. "We'll be sure to learn a lot." He turned to her. "Welcome to the team, ma'am. Try to keep up." The "ma'am" was a knife wrapped in politeness. Anna's eyes met his steady, dark, unreadable. Then a single nod, not submission, not defiance, just motion meeting resistance. Outside, the wind picked up, whispering through the mountains like it knew something none of them did. That night the colonel called her back in. His office smelled of old sweat and command decisions. He didn't offer her a chair. Didn't need to. The power dynamic was the furniture here. He tapped a datapad, her file glowing faintly in the dim light. "I read this again," he said. "It's thin." He let the word hang. Thin like her resume, like her patience. "It says you were an analyst, Signals intelligence. Anna didn't correct him. Analyst was what the board had chosen to print. Easier than explaining what really happened in the blacked-out lines. Easier than reliving the night her convoy hit the IED or the things she did after, in operations no one would ever admit existed. Madsen tossed the pad onto his desk with a metallic clatter. My men are door kickers, not linguists. The long-range surveillance you're supposed to teach, they already do from a PASH or .50 cal turrets. We don't need theory. Theory saves lives, Anna said quietly, her first uninvited words. He froze, eyebrows raised. In my experience, he shot back, speed and violence of action save lives. Sitting on a hilltop for 3 days makes you a target. He leaned forward. You're a political hire, Sharma. Someone in Langley or the Pentagon wants to look good hearing wounded veterans. I respect what you gave, but I can't have liabilities on patrol. She stood still, the discipline of a soldier without the uniform, no flinch, no rebuttal, just silence so deliberate it became defiance. So here's what's going to happen, he said. Diaz's squad has a training patrol tomorrow, 2 days in the Zervan Pass. You will not accompany them. You'll be on comms watch here in the TOC. Write me a report about their radio discipline. Understood. It was punishment wrapped as protocol. Yes, Colonel, she said. The word crystal almost slipped out, a reflex from her old life. He caught it, smirked. Good. Lesson 1, know your role, know your limitations. She left without another word. The door shut. His voice echoed behind it, calling Diaz in for new orders. Outside, the cold hit her again. On the operations screen, the Zervan Pass glowed, a jagged vein through a map of red contour lines, a narrow riverbed threading between cliffs. She studied it from across the room, a fatal funnel. Levin noticed her gaze. Don't worry, ma'am, he said with a grin. We'll take good pictures for your report. Chen, another ranger, added, maybe we'll get you a live feed so you can pretend you're out there. Their laughter scraped against her like gravel on glass. She ignored them, but her eyes traced every contour of the pass, wind direction, lines of fire, choke points. She saw what they didn't, how the terrain curved inward, a perfect ambush site, the kind that swallows confidence whole. She could have warned them. She could have walked back to Madsen and argued doctrine until dawn. But she'd been here before, not this mountain, but this silence. The kind that follows when no one believes you. So she said nothing. Back in her small quarters, she sat on the edge of a steel cot, the hum of generators filtering through the thin walls. She removed her boot, exposing the scars, pale, jagged lines crisscrossing her calf where flesh met machine. Her fingers brushed the metal brace hidden beneath the fabric. It hurt more at altitude. Pain, she reminded herself, meant alive. She looked at the M110 sniper rifle case lying unopened beneath her bed, a relic she wasn't supposed to touch anymore, not as a civilian, not as someone who had moved on. She didn't open it, not yet. The night was long. Cold wind hissed through the cracks like whispers of memory. When morning came, she was back in the TOC, headset on, eyes fixed on the green drone feed. Tiny heat signatures moved through the canyon, each dot a man from Diaz's team. They were joking over the radio, their tone casual, invincible. Moving through the riverbed, Diaz's voice crackled. All clear, easy terrain. Anna's jaw tightened. Easy terrain, the words of dead men. The drone camera trembled slightly as it tracked them from above. They weren't checking their flanks. Their spacing was sloppy. They were moving too fast, too confident. Then a flicker of static. A shape. Movement where there shouldn't be any. Her breath caught. She saw it before it happened. The shimmer of muzzle flashes embedded in stone, the telltale geometry of an ambush. Her hand hovered over the transmit button. If she warned them, she'd break chain of command. She'd be labeled insubordinate, maybe sent home. If she did. The headset crackled. A scream. Contact left. On the monitor, the night exploded in green light. Muzzle flashes flared like fireflies in hell. Figures scattered. Shouts overlapped, panic wrapped in static. Where it coming from? Levin's hit. Chin's down. Anna's pulse spiked, but her movement stayed controlled. Her eyes darted across the map, watching icons blink and disappear. Then a deeper boom. The entire fob shook. The lights flickered, screens died, smoke seeped through the ceiling vents. Madsen burst from his office, shouting orders no one could follow. Report, what the hell was that? Multiple impacts on the north perimeter, sir, a tech yelled. Comms tower down, we've lost all long-range links. Gunfire echoed outside, not training but real, sustained, angry. This wasn't an ambush, it was a coordinated assault. The colonel's confidence crumbled. He grabbed a radio, shouting for Diaz, for Havoc 1, for anyone. Only static answered. Anna rose slowly. The room pulsed with red emergency light. Panic was a living thing moving between men, feeding on fear. She crossed to the old paper map pinned on the wall, the one no one bothered to use anymore. With a grease pencil, she drew an X where Diaz's signal vanished. Then concentric circles around the base, estimating mortar arcs by sound and timing. Madsen noticed, stalked over. What are you doing? I need solutions, not doodles. They're not suppressing your squad, Anna said evenly. They're hurting them. The riverbed is a kill box. Mortars around the fob are a diversion. They're isolating you, fixing you in place so they can wipe them out. Her tone sliced through the chaos. The colonel froze, realization dawning. He had dismissed her, and now men were dying because of it. While he stood there, paralyzed by guilt and confusion, Anna moved, decisive, controlled. She limped to the armory rack, hands sweeping over weapons until she found what she wanted, the dust-covered M110. She pulled it free. The weight felt right, familiar. A private gaped. Ma'am, Colonel said to hold the perimeter. The colonel's trying to save the fort, she said, loading the magazine with methodical precision. Click, click, I'm going to save his men. She slung the rifle, grabbed a go-bag she'd packed her first day. Water, trauma kit, binoculars, 3 extra mags. Madsen shouted from behind, Sharma, where do you think you're going? I didn't give you an order. Anna paused in the doorway, half-lit by red light and smoke. You're right, she said softly. You didn't. Then she stepped out into the night, into firelight, chaos, and purpose. Each step was pain. Each breath was clarity. She moved through the storm like she'd been waiting for it. And somewhere behind the screaming, the explosions, and the chaos of men discovering their own mortality, the mountain whispered her name. Not Anna Sharma. Not the analyst. Not the broken soldier. Something older. Something reborn. The night had found its hunter. She didn't run. She didn't need to. Outside the TOC, the world had turned red. Smoke curled through the compound like something alive, tasting fear. Tracer rounds arced across the sky, red threads sowing chaos into the night. A burning Humvee spat orange flame, painting the walls with shadows that danced and screamed. Anna moved through it all with a strange, deliberate calm. Her limp wasn't a weakness anymore, it was rhythm, one measured beat after another. Thud, thud, slide. She used the rhythm to breathe, to focus. Everywhere around her, soldiers scrambled for weapons, shouting orders that no one could hear over the cacophony. Somewhere behind her, Madsen's voice barked through the radio, angry, desperate. But Anna didn't listen. She knew what the colonel didn't. The enemy wasn't trying to overrun them. Not yet. They were buying time, sealing the valley, cutting communication, waiting for the kill. Somewhere up in that dark, serrated pass, Sergeant Diaz and his men were trapped in a gorge, pinned, isolated, and dying. Anna headed west, toward the sheer cliffs that boxed the fob in. Most would call that way impossible, a vertical wall of stone where oxygen thinned and gravity hunted the careless. But she wasn't thinking of impossible. She was thinking of equations, angles, time, the geometry of survival. At the western edge, she found what she was looking for, a narrow fissure where spring meltwater had bitten through the rock, creating a jagged scar up the mountainside. It wasn't a path. It was a test. She checked the strap of her rifle, tightening it across her shoulder. The M110 felt like memory, heavy, cold, certain. The rifle didn't question. It didn't pity. It just did what it was made to do. So did she. Anna began to climb. Her gloved hands found holds where none existed, fingertips brushing edges of stone slick with frost. She used her good leg for strength, her damaged one for balance, wedging it into cracks. The pain was sharp, electric. She didn't fight it, she channeled it. Above her, the stars blurred with altitude haze. Below, the firefight at the fob dimmed to a low, distant thunder. She climbed until the sounds of men were gone, replaced by the hiss of wind and the rasp of her breath. The air thinned, turned metallic, cruel. Every meter upward stripped something away: fatigue, doubt, fear. Halfway up, she paused on a ledge no wider than her shoulders. Her lungs burned. Sweat stung her eyes. She pulled out her binoculars, adjusting the focus. And the world opened. Through the lenses, the Zervan Pass came into view, a jagged ribbon of shadow cutting between black cliffs. On the valley floor, faint muzzle flashes winked like fireflies. Two enemy machine gun nests, just as she'd predicted, spat death into the riverbed below. She shifted the focus again, north. Three figures moving fast. Setting up an RPG. Her chest tightened. There it is. The trap was complete. Diaz and his men were boxed between the crossfire and the rocket team, waiting for the final blow. She had maybe 10 minutes. Anna holstered the binoculars and looked up. The ridge still loomed above her, steep and merciless. But she smiled, a small, humorless thing. The mountain wanted to see if she'd break. She'd already broken once, and learned how to move anyway. So she climbed. The wind clawed at her jacket, tearing strands of hair free. Her gloves split at the seams. Her knuckles bled, but her grip never faltered. The pain in her right leg became a drumbeat, slow, relentless. When her body screamed stop, she thought of the riverbed, of Diaz, of the young soldiers who had laughed when she walked past them. She didn't want their approval. She wanted them alive. Because no one deserved to die stupid. She reached the ridge in silence, pulling herself over the lip and collapsing flat on her stomach. Her body trembled from exhaustion or adrenaline, she couldn't tell. The cold bit through her clothes, straight into bone. But she was there, high above the pass, exactly where she needed to be. The view was merciless. The gorge below flickered with gunfire, two machine gun nests hammering the trapped rangers. She could see muzzle flash reflecting off the rock, rhythmically, perfectly coordinated. Further north, the RPG team was in position, the leader taking his time, calm and confident. They thought the kill was guaranteed. Anna unpacked the M110. Every motion precise. Deliberate. She extended the bipod, pressed the rifle into the rock for stability, checked her zero. Her breath came slow, her heartbeat steady. She adjusted the scope, elevation, windage, drift. She'd done this hundreds of times, in deserts, in jungles, from rooftops and ridgelines where no one knew her name. But tonight it wasn't duty. It was something closer to penance. She looked through the scope, and the world vanished, replaced by the perfect circle of light. The western nest first, 800 meters, a difficult shot in daylight, suicidal at night. The wind was cross-cutting hard, maybe 10 knots. She watched the tracers, read their arc, calculated the drift. She exhaled steady. At the bottom of her breath, she squeezed. Crack! The rifle kicked against her shoulder, a sound clean as glass breaking. For a second, nothing. Then the western nest went silent. The gunner slumped forward, lifeless. His assistant froze, looking down, confusion, disbelief, before Anna's second round hit him center chest. The other nest opened fire wildly, spraying at shadows. Their tracers arced high and harmless into the night. She was already moving, crawling 20 meters left to a new position. They were shooting at a ghost. The second nest was further, 950 meters. She adjusted elevation, read the wind, settled again. Crack! Another clean shot. Another silence. The ridges went dark. 2 nests down. 1 team left. She shifted the scope north, found the RPG team. They were 1,000 meters away, beyond comfort range, even for her. But comfort wasn't why she was here. They had just loaded the rocket. 1 man steadying the tube, another shouldering it. She inhaled. Exhaled. The world slowed. She squeezed. Crack! Down in the gorge, Diaz had accepted death. Levin was bleeding out, Chen was gone. They'd run out of luck, and the world had narrowed to gunfire and dirt. Then silence. First 1 nest stopped firing, then the other. Diaz blinked. What the hell? Before he could speak, a single thunderous shot echoed from the cliffs. The man holding the RPG was flung backward, the rocket clattering harmlessly into the stones. Another shot, another body fell. The third man dropped his weapon and ran. Diaz stared, dazed. Who the hell is that? Levin, pale, whispered, an angel. Diaz keyed his radio. All orchestral elements, this is Havoc 1. We've got an angel on the high ground. Back at Fob Kestrel, power flickered back to life. The backup generator groaned, sputtered, then settled into a steady hum. Madsen and his team crowded around the single working console, listening to the static-choked radio feed. Then Diaz's voice came through, breathless, disbelieving. An angel on the high ground, threat neutralized. Madsen froze. His gaze drifted to the empty weapons rack, the missing M110. No, it couldn't be. He turned toward the shattered doorway, the cold night spilling through it. Sharma, he whispered. The radio operator glanced up wide-eyed. Sir, you don't mean. But Madsen already knew. He reached for the radio. Havoc 1, be advised. Your angel might be our civilian contractor. There was silence on the other end, the kind that carries disbelief and shame in equal measure. Then a new voice broke through, calm, cold, steady. Havoc 1, this is Overwatch. I have you in sight. Immediate threat is neutralized, but another enemy element is moving from the south. 5 minutes out. Move east up the scree slope. I'll cover you. Diaz froze. That voice. It wasn't an angel. It was her. The woman they mocked. Copy Overwatch, Diaz said hoarsely. Moving now. He slung Levin's arm over his shoulder. Let's move, she's got us. As the squad scrambled up the steep eastern slope, Anna shifted position again. Her body screamed in protest, but she didn't feel it anymore. Below, the enemy squad emerged from the shadows, confident, advancing, certain they had trapped their prey. Anna's scope found the lead man. Crack. Then another. And another. Each shot was deliberate, surgical, each one a death sentence. From below, the Rangers could hear the echo of her rifle, steady, unrelenting. 1 shot. 1 life saved. By the time they reached the ridge, Diaz could barely breathe. Levin was pale and shaking, but alive. Overwatch, Havoc 1 clear of the funnel, Diaz gasped into the mic. Negative, her voice replied instantly. Calm, composed. You're silhouetted. Crawl north 200 meters to the pine cluster. I'll meet you there. There was no hesitation. Her tone left no room for doubt. Diaz signaled his men. They crawled, dragging Levin through dirt and rock until they reached the trees, a small cluster barely visible against the cliff. They formed a perimeter, weapons up. Minutes stretched like hours. Every sound was danger. Then a shadow moved. Anna emerged from the darkness, silent, calm, unbroken. The M110 slung across her back, her face streaked with ash and frost. She knelt beside Levin without a word, pulled out her trauma kit and began to work. "Pressure dressing isn't tight enough," she murmured, cutting away the blood-soaked fabric. Her hands were steady, clinical. Tourniquet high on the thigh. Levin hissed but didn't cry out. Diaz watched her work, awestruck. This wasn't the broken woman from the base. This was someone else. "How," he whispered, "how did you do that climb, those shots?" She didn't look up. "The mission's not over, Sergeant." When she did meet his eyes, they weren't cold. They were focused, clear. The mountain wind howled around them, cold, vast, ancient. Anna tightened the bandage, checked Levin's pulse, and finally sat back on her heels. The night was still for the first time. Too still. She looked toward the horizon. The darkness shifted, faint movement, distant shapes regrouping. "They're not done," she said quietly. "They'll come again." And for the first time, Diaz saw something in her that terrified him more than the enemy ever could. Not fear. Not anger. Purpose. The kind that didn't end when the shooting stopped. What happens when silence becomes heavier than fear? That's what Diaz felt as the wind died in the pines. The firefight below was over, but the night wasn't finished with them. The mountains kept breathing, slow, patient, waiting. Anna crouched near the tree line, one hand resting on the cold earth. Through the dark, her face looked carved from the same stone that surrounded them. Diaz's men watched her like they'd never seen a human move that way, half soldier, half ghost. "Ma'am," Diaz said finally, his voice rough. "What now?" Anna's eyes stayed on the horizon. "We hold position until they regroup. They'll come again. They always do." Levin groaned beside the tree, his leg wrapped tight in the tourniquet she'd made. "How do you know?" Anna looked at him. "Because that's what I do." The answer hung there, simple, chilling. She turned back to the dark valley. Through her binoculars, she saw faint heat signatures moving, converging. The enemy wasn't retreating. They were hunting. Behind her, Diaz and the others checked magazines, whispered short prayers they didn't believe in. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "We move in 5. Diaz frowned. "Move toward what?" "Fob's east, ma'am. We head that way, we might make it before dawn." Anna shook her head. "They'll expect that. The fob is bait now. The attack there was never meant to win, it was meant to keep command busy. The real fight is here." She traced a line in the dirt with her finger, a rough map. "They think they trapped you, but they left their flank open. If we go west, deeper, we hit their command node before sunrise." Diaz stared. "You want to go deeper into enemy territory, with 3.5 people." Anna's mouth twitched. "You've got 4. No smile, but something close, like the ghost of humor, long unused. She looked up at the stars, measuring time by instinct. "We move on the next wind break." When it came, it was sudden. A low moan sweeping through the peaks, masking their footsteps as they slipped from the trees. They moved in a staggered file behind her. No one spoke. No one questioned. The terrain was cruel, jagged shale and loose stone that cut through boots and silence alike. The moon hid behind clouds, leaving only faint starlight to navigate by. Diaz found himself matching her limp, unconsciously timing his steps to hers. Thud, thud, slide. A strange rhythm of survival. He kept thinking about what she'd said, "Because that's what I do." It wasn't just knowledge of tactics, it was empathy for the enemy. She understood them because she'd been them, somewhere, sometime, under a different flag, on a different map. An hour later, they stopped under a rock overhang. The cold bit harder now. Levin was pale, drifting in and out but alive. The others, Chen's replacement, a quiet kid named Hughes and a comms tech called Mason, kept scanning the darkness. Anna crouched near the edge, checking her rifle, adjusting the suppressor, her movements mechanical, precise. Diaz finally spoke the question, gnawing at him. "Who are you?" She didn't look up. "I told you, civilian trainer." "No," he said. "Trainers don't climb cliffs like that. They don't shoot like that either." Silence. Then she said, "Once, a long time ago, I was part of something called Task Force Nomad." The name landed like thunder in the still air. Mason blinked. That's a myth. Black site hit teams, spooks and ghosts." "Not a myth," Anna said. Her voice was flat, just inconvenient. Diaz stared. "And you were what? Their sniper?" She looked up then. Her eyes caught the faint light, dark, endless, spotter mostly, sometimes both. He didn't press. He didn't need to. The truth was in the way she moved, the way she existed in this place. For a while nobody spoke. The mountain wind filled the gaps. Then her radio crackled softly. Static, then a strained voice. Kestrel 6 to any friendly element in Zervin Pass. Sitrep over. "Madsen." Diaz reached for the handset, but Anna stopped him with a raised hand. She took the radio, pressed transmit. "Kestrel 6, this is Overwatch. I have Havoc 1, 4 survivors, 1 wounded. Enemy estimated 2 platoons equipped and hunting. We are evading." There was a long pause. When Madsen spoke again, his voice had changed. "Overwatch, what are your intentions?" Anna hesitated. The wind hissed through the rocks. "I need you to hold the fob. At dawn, prep a medevac bird, but don't send it until I call. They'll be waiting for it." "Understood." A breath. Then quieter. "Overwatch, what's your full call sign? HQ needs authorization. Who the hell are you?" Anna's thumb lingered on the transmit key. She could have lied. She almost did. But the men around her had earned more than another ghost story. Her voice dropped an octave. "Service number 7545912. Authorization code, Viper Actual." Silence. Even the wind stopped. Diaz's head snapped toward her. Hughes froze mid-reload. Mason mouthed the words, "Viper Actual," as if afraid they might bite. In the TOC, half a world of command circuits came alive. Somewhere far beyond the mountain, a general looked up from his screen, disbelief cutting through bureaucracy like a blade. A new voice came over the net, calm, powerful, unmistakably senior. "Viper Actual, this is Sun God. We read you 5 by 5. Stand by." There was a pause, then, "Christ, it is you." The professionalism cracked for just a second. "Board is green. All assets are yours. What do you need?" Anna stared at the horizon, the faint orange glow of distant fires painting the snow. "I need a full sensor sweep of Grid 47 Alpha, and I need a Predator drone, weapons cold. I only want its eyes." "Copy Ghost, copy Viper Actual. Predator inbound, 10 mics, good hunting." The radio fell silent. The only sound left was the mountain breathing again. Diaz exhaled slowly. "Ghost Viper," he whispered. The name barely escaped his lips. Anna's head turned sharply. For the first time since he'd met her, her eyes softened, just a fraction. He swallowed. "That's you from the stories, the one who—" "Stop," she said quietly, not angry, just tired. "Stories keep soldiers brave, leave them that way." But the damage was done. The name hung between them like an old flag raised again after years in the dirt. Ghost Viper. The woman who never missed. The sniper who'd vanished after her last mission went black. The legend whispered to recruits to remind them what one person could do. Now she was flesh, blood, and scar tissue, cleaning mud off a rifle beside 3 half-frozen soldiers who'd once mocked her limp. Diaz looked away, shame burning in his throat. Anna adjusted the scope again. "They're regrouping 2 clicks north," she murmured. "Command element in that box canyon. We hit them before sunrise, they break." Diaz blinked. You want to hit their HQ with 4 people and a drone feed. No, she said, standing. You want to live till sunrise. I want to finish this. She turned, her limp catching the moonlight. Grab your gear, we move. And they did. No argument, no hesitation. They followed her deeper into the wilderness, every sense sharpened. The drone feed flickered on her wrist display, ghostly white shapes against black terrain. Dozens of heat signatures sweeping south, hunting. They think we're rabbits, she said under her breath. Let's show them the wolf. The words weren't loud, but they carried weight. Even the night seemed to listen. For 2 hours they crept through gullies and rock spines, avoiding patrols by meters. Twice they froze as enemy fighters passed within arm's reach. Anna's hand would rise, steady, signaling wait. Then lower. Move. Diaz realized she wasn't guessing. She was orchestrating, reading the drone feed, the wind, even the rhythm of enemy movements like music. Finally she stopped, crouched behind a boulder. Ahead lay the box canyon, narrow, hidden, and deadly. A small cluster of tents glowed faintly, a radio mast stabbing the sky. Around a fire, a dozen men sat drinking tea. The warlord himself wore a red scarf, the one who thought he'd outsmarted them. Anna nodded toward the ridge above. That's our perch. The climb was slow, brutal. The slope was all loose rock and betrayal. Halfway up, Levin slipped, sending stones clattering down. Instantly, shouts echoed from below. Flashlights swept the darkness. Diaz's pulse spiked, but before he could react, Anna was already moving back to Levin. She took his rifle, looped his arm over her shoulder, and half-dragged, half-carried him upward. Her bad leg trembled under the strain, but she didn't stop. Each step was defiance, each breath a vow. When they reached the top, the first light of dawn was beginning to paint the eastern peaks. The ridge was perfect, narrow, high, and cruel. Anna lay prone, setting up the M110 with reverence. She wiped the lens of her scope, lined up magazines beside her, checked the wind with a handheld meter. Diaz crawled beside her, still awed. "Ma'am, what's the plan?" She didn't take her eye off the scope. The warlords in that tent, 2 lieutenants by the fire, radio operator by the antenna, 4 targets, 4 rounds. When they drop, the rest will scatter. Diaz hesitated. "We can call an airstrike, Predator on station. 1 hellfire and it's done." Anna finally turned her head. Her eyes were sharp as the mountain air. "Airstrikes are loud, they make martyrs. This," she tapped the rifle, "this makes ghosts." She looked through the scope again. "When I fire, they'll panic, some will fight, some will run. Shoot the ones who fight, let the rest go. Fear travels faster than bullets." Diaz nodded slowly. He understood now. She wasn't just fighting a battle. She was crafting a message, one written in silence and precision. She took a long breath. The wind shifted east. Perfect. Through the scope, the world narrowed to a single circle of light. The warlord stepped from his tent, stretching. "Targets acquired," she whispered. Then, crack. The rifle spoke once, sharp and clean. Down below, the man in the red scarf folded to the ground, lifeless. Crack. A lieutenant collapsed into the fire, his teacup scattering embers. Crack. The second lieutenant fell backward, eyes open to the dawn. Crack. The radio operator slumped over his console, headset slipping free. 4 shots. 10 seconds. An empire undone. The canyon erupted in chaos. Shouts, panic, wild gunfire spraying at ghosts on the ridge. Anna's voice was calm over the comms. "Engage." Diaz and his men opened fire, controlled, deliberate. The difference between panic and purpose. The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes, then silence. Anna keyed her radio. "Kestrel 6, this is Ghost Viper. Package secure, send the bus." She rolled onto her back, staring at the paling sky. The wind whispered through the peaks, cold and pure. For the first time in years, she let herself breathe. Below, the fire burned out. Above, the sun broke the horizon. In that moment, the mountain finally exhaled. And somewhere far below, men who had once mocked her stood silent, because they'd seen what a ghost could do when the world forgot her name. What do you say when the gunfire stops? When the noise that defined your existence fades, and you're left with the sound of your own breath? For Anna Sharma, silence had never been peace. It was just the moment between storms. The ridge was cold, quiet, and slick with frost. The bodies below were already fading into the color of the earth, another forgotten story the mountain would keep. She lay there for a while, cheek pressed against the rock, eyes half closed. Her breath fogged the scope's lens, blurring the world into soft gray shapes. Behind her the squad waited, uncertain, reverent. Diaz lowered his rifle slowly. His ears still rang, but the silence that followed wasn't just relief. It was awe. He looked at Anna, the woman they'd mocked, doubted, sidelined. She was lying still, her face unreadable, the barrel of her rifle cooling in the dawn wind. He didn't know whether to thank her or apologize. She broke the silence first. "Check weapons, low profile, we're not done yet." Her voice was calm, not triumphant, as if 4 perfect kills from over a kilometer away were nothing more than maintenance work. Levin shifted against a rock, wincing as pain tore through his bandaged leg. "Ma'am, they're running, you did it." Anna glanced at him. "No," she said softly, "they'll regroup, fear's just a pause between decisions." Diaz swallowed hard. "Then what's next?" "We hold until extraction." She tapped her radio. "Kestrel 6, this is Ghost Viper, coordinates marked, bring the bird." The response came almost instantly. Colonel Madsen's voice hoarse, exhausted but alive. "Copy Ghost Viper, bird en route, 15 minutes. There was a pause, then softer, "Good work, Sharma." Anna didn't answer. She was already scanning the horizon again, her eyes restless. Below, smoke from the destroyed camp curled into the sky like a signal fire. She knew it would draw attention, fighters, curious scouts, maybe journalists in a week. The mountain never kept secrets forever. But this one, this moment, belonged to her, and the 3 men who now looked at her as something beyond flesh and blood. Hughes approached her carefully, as if she might vanish if he moved too quickly. "Ma'am," he said quietly, you really were Ghost Viper." She didn't look at him. "That's just a name." He hesitated. "They say Ghost Viper took out entire command chains, 6 insurgent leaders in one night, in 3 countries." Anna's eyes stayed on the scope. "They say a lot of things." Was it true? She finally looked at him, not angry, just tired. "Truth doesn't matter, only the message." He didn't understand, not really. Few ever did. Minutes passed. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of cordite and cold pine. Anna felt the ache in her legs settling deep, the dull, grinding kind of pain that spoke of old injuries and colder memories. She let it stay. Pain was grounding, pain kept her human. The distant whump-whump of rotor blades broke the silence. "The extraction team." "Bird inbound," Diaz said, relief creeping into his voice. "About time." Anna said nothing. Her eyes never left the canyon below. She'd seen too many rescues turn into ambushes. The first Blackhawk came into view, slicing through the thin air, rotors kicking up clouds of snow and dust. A second followed close behind. The noise swallowed everything. Anna waited until they were close enough to see faces through the cockpit glass before she finally stood. The wind tore at her jacket, the fabric snapping like a flag. Diaz helped Levin to his feet, throwing the wounded man's arm over his shoulder. Hughes and Mason carried what gear they could. Together, they moved toward the rocky outcrop that would serve as their landing zone. Anna followed last, her limp more pronounced now, every step echoing the toll of the climb, the cold, the fight. As the Blackhawks descended, soldiers leaned out, scanning for threats. One of them spotted her, small, steady, rifle slung over her back like a relic. He didn't salute. He just stared, recognition dawning even before the name reached his lips. She raised a single hand, signaling clear zone. The chopper touched down in a cyclone of dust and snow. The side door slid open, and Colonel Madsen stepped out. He looked different now. Not the rigid, self-assured officer who dismissed her as a liability, but a man who had seen the cost of his certainty. His uniform was stained with soot and dirt. His face was drawn, eyes bloodshot, lips pale. For a moment he just stood there, staring at her, the woman he'd tried to bury behind a desk. The soldiers behind him slowed, uncertain, watching something unfold they didn't have words for. Madsen walked forward through the swirling dust, stopped a few feet away. Neither of them spoke. Then, in a single, deliberate motion, he brought his hand to his brow and saluted. Not the formal, sharp salute of a superior officer. This was different. It was slower, heavier, the salute of a soldier to another soldier, a gesture of respect stripped bare of rank, pride, or pretense. Anna's eyes met his. For a long second she didn't move. Then she returned it, precise, measured, not forgiveness, not triumph, just acknowledgement. The mountains watched in silence. No one clapped, no one cheered. But every man on that ridge understood something they hadn't the day before. Respect wasn't granted by uniform or rank or reputation. It was earned in the quiet moments after chaos. Madsen lowered his hand. His voice was rough when he finally spoke. "You saved my men." Anna's reply was almost a whisper. "They saved themselves. I just made sure they had the chance." He nodded, eyes wet in the cold. "Still, I was wrong about you." She didn't answer. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. The team loaded onto the helicopters. Levin was first, his legs stabilized. Hughes and Mason followed, glancing back at her as they climbed the ramp. Diaz hesitated at the door. "Ma'am," he said. She looked at him. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything, for proving us wrong." Her lips twitched. "Don't thank me, Sergeant, learn from it." He nodded once, firm, humbled, and stepped aboard. When it was her turn, she paused at the ramp, looking out over the valley. Smoke curled from the ruins of the enemy camp. The dawn light touched the peaks, turning the snow gold. She memorized it, not as a victory, but as evidence. Evidence that she could still make a difference, even when the world tried to convince her she was finished. As the helicopter lifted off, she didn't look down. Some things are better left to the mountain. The flight back to Kestrel was silent. Diaz's men sat slumped in exhaustion. Madsen stared out the window, lost in 1,000 unspoken thoughts. Anna sat by the door, the cold wind whipping her hair. Her hands rested on the rifle in her lap, the M110 she'd pulled from the dust and made holy again. When the base finally came into view, smoke still rose from parts of it, black scars against the thin air. Medics waited on the landing pad, stretchers lined up. As the Black Hawk touched down, Anna stood, her legs stiff. She let the others disembark first. Diaz gave her one last nod before the medics carried Levin away. When she stepped off the ramp, the garrison fell quiet. The same young soldiers who had laughed when she arrived now stood motionless, eyes wide. They didn't know what to say. She didn't stop for them. She walked straight through the silent line, past the shattered perimeter walls, past the burnt-out vehicles. Every step echoed like a lesson. Inside the base, Colonel Madsen followed behind her. He didn't try to speak again. Some debts couldn't be paid with words. When Anna reached her quarters, she closed the door and leaned against it for a moment, eyes shut. The sudden quiet pressed in like a weight. Her room was small, sterile, a cot, a metal desk, and a single window facing the mountains. She set the rifle down on the cleaning mat. One piece at a time, she disassembled it, bolt, receiver, scope, spring. Each part laid out with precision, like a ritual she'd performed 1,000 times. The smell of solvent filled the air, sharp, metallic, clean. Her hands moved with automatic grace. Brush, wipe, oil, inspect. The rhythm soothed her. Outside, voices rose and fell, chaos returning to normal. But she wasn't thinking about the mission anymore. Not about Diaz or Madsen or the salute. Her mind was far away, back in the desert, years ago when she still wore a uniform. The last time she'd used the call sign, Viper Actual. A mission that had gone wrong, a team that hadn't come home, and the guilt that had followed her ever since. This mission, this mountain, had given her something she hadn't realized she'd lost. Purpose. When she finished cleaning the rifle, she reassembled it carefully, chambered an empty round, checked the action. Smooth. Perfect. She set it on the desk, parallel to the edge, and stood. Her cane leaned against the wall, untouched since she'd arrived. She looked at it for a long time, then left it there. Outside her window, the peaks of the Zervin Pass blazed under the noon sun. They looked peaceful now, almost innocent. But she knew better. The mountain didn't care about heroes or ghosts. It didn't care who lived or died. It just existed, patient, enduring, eternal. Anna watched it for a long time. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "Rest now, it's done." She sat on the edge of her cot, her right leg throbbing, hands folded loosely in her lap. No medals, no applause, no grand speeches. Just quiet. And in that quiet, peace, fragile and fleeting but real. Outside, the flags of Fob Kestrel stirred in the wind. And for the first time in years, the name Ghost Viper meant something simple. Not legend. Not myth. Not fear. Just a woman who came back from the dead to do what was right. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. What happens when the fight is over, but the war doesn't know it yet? For Anna, the silence that followed the mission was heavier than any gunfire. She faced the enemy, she outlasted the mountain. But now she had to face something worse: paperwork, questions, and the ghosts that wear clean uniforms. It started 3 hours after the extraction. A knock on her door, sharp, controlled. She opened it to find a man in plain fatigues, clean-shaven, cold eyes, clipboard in hand. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. She'd seen his type before. "Captain Sharma," he said formally, "you're requested for debrief. Command tent, now." She almost laughed. Captain. She hadn't held that rank in years. But she nodded, grabbed her field jacket, and followed him through the camp. Everywhere she went, eyes followed, not with mockery this time, but with quiet, uncertain awe. Soldiers stepped aside, conversations paused. Her limp was still there, but now it looked like something earned, not something pitied. The command tent was dimly lit, generator humming in the corner. Colonel Madsen stood behind the field table, posture stiff. 2 intelligence officers flanked him, faces blank, notepads ready. Anna entered, saluted out of habit more than respect. "Reporting as requested." Madsen nodded, at ease. The intel officer on the left spoke first, voice smooth, detached. "Ms. Sharma, or should we say Viper Actual, we'd like to clarify the nature of your actions during last night's engagement." Anna said nothing. The officer flipped open his file. "You led an unsanctioned infiltration beyond friendly lines, engaged and neutralized multiple hostiles, and coordinated unauthorized use of aerial reconnaissance assets. Care to explain?" Her eyes didn't flicker. "I did what was necessary." The second officer leaned forward. "Necessary or impulsive?" "Effective," she said. Madsen's jaw tightened. He looked at her, then at them. Her actions saved 4 soldiers and stopped a counteroffensive that could have taken this base. If you're here to reprimand her, you're wasting your breath. The first officer smiled thinly. "We're here to determine liability, Colonel, not morality." Anna's lips twitched. You can't file a report on what you don't understand. The man's smile faded. What's that supposed to mean? It means, she said quietly, you weren't there. You didn't hear them die over the radio. You didn't climb that ridge with your hands bleeding and lungs burning. You didn't see what was coming. She took a step closer, her voice low, deliberate. You don't measure necessity in ink. You measure it in body bags. The tent fell silent. Madsen cleared his throat, stepping in before things broke. Gentlemen, that'll be all for now. The officers hesitated, then gathered their papers and left, though not without a final, uneasy glance toward her. When they were gone, Madsen let out a breath. He looked older than he had the night before. Hell of a mess you made, Sharma. She gave a half-smile. You're welcome. He almost laughed, almost. Then quieter, they'll bury this, you know, the report, the footage, the drone feed. Command doesn't like heroes it didn't authorize. I know. Then why do it? She looked at him, eyes distant. Because someone had to. Madsen nodded slowly. You ever think about coming back? Her gaze flickered. There's no back for people like me, Colonel. There's just forward. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, the wind rattled the tent flaps, that same mountain wind that had carried gunfire the night before. Madsen finally said, You're cleared to return to civilian status. Temporary stay for medical evaluation. After that, HQ will contact you for further assessment. Meaning? He hesitated. Meaning they don't know what to do with you. She nodded. They never did. She turned to leave. Sharma, he called softly. She stopped at the door. He looked at her not as a commander, but as a man who'd seen his beliefs collapse in one night. I should have trusted you. Anna met his gaze. You shouldn't have needed to. And then she walked out, leaving him alone with the weight of his own realization. That night the base was quieter. The fires were out, the generators steady, the stars fierce and clear. Anna sat alone outside the infirmary, jacket wrapped tight against the cold. Her leg throbbed, the familiar ache that never really left. She lit a cigarette, watched the smoke drift away into the night. She didn't even smoke much anymore, but the habit was old, a relic from deployments past. Something about the ritual steadied her hands. From somewhere nearby came the faint sound of laughter, young soldiers in the mess tent, celebrating survival. She smiled faintly. They deserved that. They'd earned it. Her radio, still clipped to her belt, crackled softly. A faint, distant voice. Overwatch, you still up there? It was Daya's. She hesitated, then keyed the mic. Copy, go ahead. A small laugh came through. Just checking if angels need sleep. She shook her head, a real smile breaking through. Only when the mortals stop making trouble. He chuckled. Fair, we're headed out tomorrow, back to the main rotation. Didn't want to leave without saying thank you, again. Take care of Levin, she said. He's tougher than he looks. There was a pause, then quieter. You really were Ghost Viper, huh? Anna stared at the mountain silhouetted against the stars. Once, she said softly, not anymore. Diaz hesitated. Why'd you stop? She thought about it for a long moment before answering. Because ghosts can't live among the living forever. Static, then, maybe not, but sometimes the living need ghosts. The line went dead. She sat there, the cold biting at her fingers, listening to the hum of the bass and the whisper of the wind. For the first time in years, she didn't feel angry or ashamed, just tired. But it was a clean kind of tired, the kind that comes when you've finally done something that matters. 2 days later, they called her to medical. The room smelled like antiseptic and silence. A medic examined her leg, murmured about nerve damage, scar tissue, limited mobility. You shouldn't have been climbing, ma'am, he said. She looked him straight in the eye. And yet I did. He hesitated, unsure whether to argue. Well, you'll always walk, but running, jumping, not likely. She smiled faintly. Running overrated. When she left the clinic, she found a single envelope taped to her door. No name, no insignia, just a single word written in pencil, classified. Inside a single sheet, no header, no signature, just a line of text. Viper actual status reactivated, await contact, eyes only. Her pulse slowed. She stared at the paper for a long time before folding it neatly and sliding it back into the envelope. She didn't burn it. She didn't throw it away. She just set it on the desk beside her rifle and sat in silence. There was no joy in it, no pride, just inevitability. Like gravity or guilt. She looked out the window at the peaks. The snow was falling again, soft and steady, covering the scars of battle. And she realized something. Maybe the mountain wasn't a place of punishment. Maybe it was a place of renewal, cruel, honest renewal. Out there, stripped of everything, rank, reputation, pity, she had become something true again. Not Ghost Viper. Not the broken veteran in the corner of a forgotten base. Just Anna. A soldier. A survivor. A woman who refused to be erased. Later that night, Madsen came by. He didn't knock, just walked in quietly, hands clasped behind his back. He saw the envelope on her desk but said nothing. Instead, he looked out the window with her, two silhouettes against the endless white. "They're talking about giving you a medal," he said softly. She didn't look away from the snow. "They'll take it back once they read the full report." He smiled faintly. "You don't care, do you?" "No," she said. "I just want them to remember the ones who didn't come home." They stood there in silence for a while. Then Madsen said, "If you ever need a team again, you know where to find one." Anna turned to him. "You don't owe me that." He shook his head. "Maybe not, but I owe myself the reminder." He left then, closing the door softly behind him. Anna stayed by the window long after he was gone. The night outside was white and endless. The wind whispered through the wires, carrying something that almost sounded like a voice, or maybe just memory. She whispered back, her voice barely audible. "I'm still here." And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. In war, people always talk about strength, about courage, about the moment someone pulls the trigger. But no one talks about what comes after. The silence, the memories, the weight of being the one who lived. Anna Sharma understood that better than anyone. She wasn't a legend, she wasn't a ghost. She was something far rarer. A survivor who didn't let survival harden her heart. And maybe that was the bravest thing of all. What do you do when the war starts whispering your name again? For Anna Sharma, leaving the mountain didn't mean leaving the fight. The snow melted from her boots, but the silence stayed. That kind of silence, the kind you earn through loss, clings to you long after the guns have gone quiet. 3 days after the debrief, a convoy rolled out from Fob Kestrel. Anna sat in the rear of the second Humvee, window cracked, the cold air scraping against her face. The base shrank behind her, a scatter of tents, antennas, and smoke fatting into the horizon. She didn't look back. Some places weren't meant to be revisited. The road wound through canyons still scarred by the firefight, shattered trucks, blackened rock, a place where men had screamed and vanished into the dirt. Now it was just quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you remember too much. The driver, a young corporal with nerves too fresh for the field, kept glancing at her through the mirror. "You really took out a whole cell up there?" he asked, voice cautious. Anna didn't answer. He tried again. "They said you used to be Black Ops, some call you." "Don't," she interrupted. The kid froze. Her tone wasn't harsh, just final. He didn't ask again. The convoy drove on. Hours later, they reached the forward command airstrip, a strip of cracked asphalt surrounded by mountains and wind. A single transport plane waited, its engines idling, impatient. Madsen was there. He'd come personally, not in uniform this time, just a jacket and the look of a man who'd aged decades in a week. She stepped out of the Humvee, shouldering her pack. "You sure you're ready?" he asked. She gave a faint, humorless smile. Ready stopped meaning anything a long time ago. He nodded, then handed her a folder, thin, black, unmarked. "Your official clearance. Transport to Ramstein, then DC. They'll want a briefing." She raised an eyebrow. "Will they listen this time?" Madsen's jaw tightened. "They'll have to. Your name's already out." That stopped her. "What?" He hesitated. "You know how it goes. Someone leaks a report, the media smells blood. Unknown female operative saves pin-down unit in Zervan Pass. It's on military forums already. They're calling you Ghost Viper." Her eyes narrowed. That wasn't supposed to happen. Madsen shrugged helplessly. "My guess. Someone in the chain of command thought the public could use a clean story, a redemption myth. They don't know it's real." Anna's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes hardened. "Ghosts don't like being seen," she said quietly. Madsen nodded. "I'll do what I can to keep your name buried, but be careful, Anna. The world loves heroes right up until it remembers they're human." She looked at him, long, steady, unblinking. "Then let them forget me again." He sighed. "You know that's not how it works." No, she thought, it never was. The flight was long, sterile, endless. Anna sat by the window, the world below turning from mountains to desert to ocean. For the first time in days, she let her mind wander. Not to the firefight, not to the mountain, but to the faces. Diaz, Levin, Hughes, Mason. Alive because she hadn't quit. And the ones from before, faces she still saw in dreams. Nomad 6, Harper, Sade, the ones she hadn't saved. Survivor's math never balances. When the plane touched down in Germany, the world felt too clean, too normal. No dust, no gunfire, just tarmac, glass, and bureaucracy. A liaison met her at the gate, polite, expressionless. "Ms. Sharma, this way." They led her through sterile corridors to a temporary lodging unit. White walls, one bed, a table, and a file waiting neatly on it. Inside the file, her next destination. Langley. She didn't sleep much that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the mountain wind again, that low, endless whisper through the cliffs. She could still smell the cordite, still feel the cold bite of the rock against her palms. In the mirror, she saw a face she barely recognized. Sharper lines, eyes older than their years. And something else, something that wasn't there before. Peace. No. Something quieter. Acceptance. Langley was gray when she arrived, rain streaking the glass, clouds hanging low. They took her to a windowless room. A table, a recorder, a single light. Across from her sat 3 men and 1 woman. Intelligence, legal, command. Different uniforms, same eyes. One of them started the recorder. "This is the classified debrief of subject code Viper actual mission designation, Zervan Pass, date and time." Anna cut in. "You can skip the date, I remember it." The lead officer smiled faintly. "Of course. Ms. Sharma, you understand this interview is off the record. Nothing leaves this room without clearance." "Everything leaves a room eventually," she said. He ignored the comment. "Let's start simple. Why did you engage without command authorization?" Anna's answer was calm. "Because command wasn't there." The woman on the panel leaned forward. "And what was your objective?" "Survival." "That's not in the mission parameters." "No," Anna said, "it's not." The officer sighed, flipping a page. "We reviewed the drone footage. 4 confirmed kills, 2 secondary targets neutralized by indirect fire. Precision at extreme range. It's impressive, but also concerning." "Concerning?" "Yes, you operated independently, reactivated a decommissioned call sign, and assumed command authority. That's not standard behavior. Anna looked him in the eye. Neither is dying. Silence. They stared at her, waiting for her to break, to justify herself, to beg for understanding. But Anna Sharma didn't beg, not anymore. After a long pause, the woman on the panel spoke. There's talk of reinstatement. Ghost Viper was a myth we needed once. Maybe we need her again. Anna's expression didn't change. Ghost Viper's dead. Then what are you? Anna hesitated, then said softly, the part that lived. The officer folded his hands. And what do you plan to do with that part? Whatever I have to. Hours later, she walked out into the rain. The world looked washed clean, streets shining, sky cracked open. She stood there for a while, face tilted upward, letting it soak her uniform. Around her, people hurried past, umbrellas and phones and deadlines. No one looked twice at the woman with the scarred leg and haunted eyes. And for the first time, she liked that. To them, she was invisible again. Perfect. She limped down the steps, hands in her pockets, until she reached the far end of the parking lot, a place where the rain hit harder and the city's noise faded. That's where she saw it. A small paper poster, half torn, plastered to a wall. Mysterious female operative saves soldiers in mountain ambush. Identity unknown. Rumors suggest code name, Ghost Viper. Her photo wasn't there, but the silhouette was unmistakable, her, rifle raised against the dawn. She stared at it for a long time. Then she tore it down, folded it once, twice, and slipped it into her pocket. That night she took a room in a cheap hotel outside Arlington. No cameras, no questions, just silence. She made tea, sat by the window, watched the city lights blur through the rain. Her phone buzzed once, unknown number. She answered. No voice at first, just breathing, then a calm, familiar tone. Still watching the horizon, Viper. Her pulse steadied. You're supposed to be dead. So are you. A pause, then they're rebuilding Nomad. Smaller, quieter, same ghosts, new orders, they want you back. She said nothing. You don't have to say yes, the voice continued. Just think about it. The world's getting loud again, too loud. Click, line dead. Anna sat there for a long time, the phone cooling in her hand. Outside, thunder rolled over the Potomac. She looked down at her right leg, the scar, the stiffness, the history carved into muscle and bone. The pain was still there. It always would be. But pain was proof she was still alive. She set the phone on the table, next to her tea. For a while she said nothing. Just listened to the rain, steady and relentless, like a heartbeat against the glass. Then she whispered, almost to the city itself. Maybe the world doesn't need a ghost. Maybe it just needs someone who remembers what they cost. Later that night, unable to sleep, she walked through the empty streets, coat collar turned up, hair damp. The city hummed with late-night traffic and forgotten dreams. She passed a group of young recruits laughing outside a diner, their uniforms still stiff with starch, their voices full of invincibility. One of them looked up as she passed. Hey, you look like that sniper lady from... She stopped, looked at him. He froze mid-sentence, something in her gaze pulling the words right out of his throat. Be careful with your stories, she said softly. They have teeth. Then she walked on, disappearing into the mist. The recruits fell silent. One whispered, was that her? The others didn't answer. They just watched the darkness she'd vanished into, unsure if they'd met a hero or a warning. Back in her room, Anna took out the folded poster. For a long time she just stared at it, the silhouette of her own legend, born again without her consent. Then she unfolded the envelope marked classified. The same note waited inside. Viper actual status reactivated. She took a deep breath. folded both papers together, the myth and the order, and slid them into her jacket pocket. Then she picked up her rifle case. Not as a weapon, as a choice. In the quiet before dawn, Anna Sharma stood by the window. The city below glowed soft, distant, unaware. She could walk away, disappear again, let the ghost fade. Or she could go back into the dark, not for revenge, not for redemption, but because she was one of the few who still remembered what war really costs. She closed her eyes. The mountain wind was gone now. Only the rain remained. And somewhere between the two, Anna found her answer. She whispered it to no one, not to the ghosts, not to the walls, not to the world that would never understand. Only to herself. Once more, every ghost has a moment when it decides whether to haunt again. For Anna Sharma, that moment came at dawn. The rain had stopped, but the city still glistened, wet asphalt, gray light, quiet streets. She watched the sun break through the clouds as if the world was pretending nothing had changed. But she knew better. The message had been clear. Viper actual status reactivated. She could have ignored it, could have torn it up, walked away, built some version of peace. But peace had never lasted for people like her. By the time she left the hotel, the streets were half empty. She wore plain clothes, jeans, jacket, hair tied back. The limp was lighter now, more like a rhythm than a wound. At the corner, a black SUV waited. No plates, no markings, just tinted glass and quiet menace. The driver leaned out, expression unreadable. "Ms. Sharma, we've been expecting you." Of course they had. She slid into the back seat. The city blurred past in silence, steel, concrete, reflections of lives that didn't know how fragile they were. An hour later, they turned off the main road and entered a compound hidden behind high fences and motion sensors. A new facility, smaller, quieter than the old days. No insignias, just numbers. Task Force Nomad was reborn. Inside, everything smelled of antiseptic and secrets. Monitors hummed, showing satellite feeds, encrypted maps, lists of call signs. She recognized some, others were new, untested. A voice spoke behind her. "Didn't think you'd actually show." She turned. Captain Rourke, mid-30s, square jaw, the kind of soldier who'd read her file but never lived her wars. He smiled like a man meeting a ghost he wasn't sure he believed in. "So it's true. Ghost Viper's back." Anna's tone was flat. "You can drop the ghost part." "Can't," he said. "It's half the reason the team volunteered." She studied him. Volunteered for what? He handed her a tablet, classified briefing. Operation Karma's Edge. Target, a rogue arms network operating in borderless zones. Intel suggested one of its key operatives, a former asset gone dark. Anna's eyes narrowed. Codename Falcon. Rourke nodded. "You knew him." She didn't answer right away, just stared at the name. Falcon. In another life, that had been her spotter, her partner, the one she trusted with her six, until the day he walked away with intel that cost 6 agents their lives. He'd vanished into the black. Rumor said he was selling weapons, training insurgents, building his own ghost army. Rourke watched her closely. "We track his supply routes, but we can't get close. He knows our playbook too well, that's why they want you." Anna looked up. "You think he won't see me coming?" Rourke's smile faded. "We're counting on it." The new Nomad team was small, 4 members, all younger than her scars. There was Vega, the drone tech's sharp eyes, faster fingers, quiet as a shadow. Miles, the medic, all heart and humor, the kind of soldier who believed empathy could patch bullet wounds. Kane, the breacher, built like a wall, tattoos crawling up his neck, hiding a soft voice. And Rourke, the one trying too hard to prove he belonged in her legend. They met her in the ready room, tension thick in the air. Rourke did introductions, but everyone already knew her name. Kane was the first to speak. Didn't think you were real. Anna adjusted the strap on her duffel. I didn't either. Miles grinned, trying to cut the tension. Ma'am, it's an honor. We grew up on your file, well, the redacted version anyway. Then you didn't grow up on much. Vega stayed silent, eyes flicking between her and the wall of mission screens. Rourke handed her a headset. We deploy tonight. Objective is recon only. Falcons moving through a neutral zone. We want eyes on, not engagement. Anna raised an eyebrow. You don't believe that? Rourke hesitated. No, I don't. She nodded. Good, because he won't let you watch without a fight. Hours later, the transport plane sliced through clouds over the unnamed desert. The night outside was absolute, black horizon, faint stars, and the hum of purpose filling the cabin. Anna sat across from Rourke, watching him check his weapon. His movements were efficient, mechanical, too perfect. The kind that comes from training, not experience. You ever lose anyone out there? She asked quietly. He looked up, caught off guard. What? She tilted her head. You handle your rifle like you've never had to use it up close. That's not an insult, just an observation. Rourke met her gaze. I've lost people. She nodded once. Good, then you know what we're walking into. Silence settled again, broken only by the drone of the engines. Vega tapped her tablet, linking the live satellite feed. Convoy confirmed. 4 trucks, heavy escort, moving toward the border canyon. Kane grinned. Time to wake the ghosts. Anna didn't smile. Ghosts never sleep. They dropped in under moonlight. The desert stretched endlessly, dunes like waves, cold air biting at exposed skin. The wind carried the smell of dust and oil. Anna moved first, crouched low, rifle steady. The others followed her lead, 4 shadows moving through the silence. From their ridge, they watched the convoy crawl across the sand below. Vega whispered, thermals show 12 heat signatures. 2 SUVs front, 2 trucks rear, Falcons likely in the center. Anna adjusted her scope. He'll have counter-snipers. Look for the gaps, not the targets. The wind shifted, her breath slowed. Through the glass she saw him. Falcon. Older, broader, but unmistakable. He stepped out of the lead truck, scanned the horizon, and for a moment his head turned, almost like he knew. Anna froze. For years she'd pictured this moment, confrontation, justice, closure. But now all she felt was the weight of everything between them. Memories flooded back. His voice in her ear, we don't miss Anna. His hand steady on her shoulder the day they took the shot that changed everything. His betrayal, the silence that followed. She tightened her grip on the rifle. Rourke's voice crackled softly, you have him. She hesitated, yes. Take the shot. Her finger hovered on the trigger. Then she whispered, negative. Rourke hissed, what the hell are you doing? Watching. Watching what? He's right there. Her eyes stayed on the scope. If he's here, it's not for trade, it's for message. Something's off. Vega's screen flickered. Ma'am, I've got a secondary feed North Ridge. Multiple signals inbound, heavy, not local militia. Anna's blood ran cold. Pull back now. But it was too late. The ridge exploded in a flash of fire and sand, RPGs screaming across the dunes. The convoy erupted, trucks flipping, fire lighting the night. Falcon dove for cover, shouting commands. Ambush, Rourke yelled. We're compromised. Anna dragged Vega down behind a rock, bullets chewing the sand inches away. Who the hell are they? Miles shouted. Private hitters, Anna growled. Falcon's enemies, not ours. So we just let them kill him. She hesitated, the same moral question that had followed her all her life. Falcon had betrayed her. But the world didn't need another monster. Suppressive fire, she barked. Protect the convoy. Rourke turned, incredulous. We're defending the target. Do it. The desert lit up, her team firing precise, controlled bursts into the chaos. The air stank of gunpowder and burning fuel. Falcon looked up through the smoke, saw her silhouette against the ridge. Recognition struck like lightning. For a second, time stopped. Two ghosts face to face, across years and war. He didn't raise his weapon. Neither did she. Then the moment broke, more explosions, shouts, dust. Kane went down, hit in the shoulder. Miles dragged him behind a dune, blood soaking his sleeve. Rourke cursed, "We're outnumbered, extraction now." Anna keyed the mic. "Nomad, mark our position." Above them a drone buzzed faintly, invisible but present. The air shimmered. Then from nowhere, precision hellfire, surgical and absolute. The attacking force vanished in a wash of light and shockwave. When the dust settled, only silence remained. Falcon's convoy was in ruins, his men dead or fleeing. He stood alone by the burning truck, smoke curling around him. Anna rose slowly from cover, rifle at her side. Rourke grabbed her arm. "What are you doing?" "Finishing it." She limped down the slope, each step deliberate. The sand shifted under her boots. Falcon watched her come, expression unreadable. When she stopped a few meters away, they just stared at each other, two survivors of the same forgotten war. "You should have killed me," he said quietly. "I tried," she replied. He smiled faintly. "You always were better at mercy than orders." She looked at the fire, not him. "What are you doing out here, Falcon?" He shrugged. "Same as you, I guess, trying to outlive the things we did." "You're arming the same people who kill our own." "Because our own stopped listening." His words cut, not because they were wrong, but because she'd thought them herself once. She leveled the rifle. "You walk away today, you disappear if I see you again." "You won't." He turned, limping toward the darkness, swallowed by smoke and wind. Rourke shouted behind her, "We can't let him go." Anna didn't move. "He's already gone." Rourke's voice cracked. "You just let a traitor walk." She looked back at him, calm, quiet, resolute. "No, I let a ghost fade." Hours later, back at base, the debrief was chaos. Command demanded answers. Rourke was furious. Vega defended her. Miles patched Kane's wound in silence. Anna said nothing. She just cleaned her rifle. Finally, Rourke slammed his hands on the table. "You had him. You could have ended it." She looked up. "You think endings come from bullets?" He froze, words dying in his throat. She stood, holstered her sidearm, and started walking out. "Where are you going?" he demanded. She paused at the door. "Home," she said, "wherever that is." Outside, dawn crept over the desert again, soft light painting wreckage gold. The wind carried no gunfire this time, only the whisper of sand moving over old scars. Anna stood there for a long time, the horizon endless before her. She thought of Falcon, of Diaz, of Madsen, of all the names carved into silence. The war never ended, it just changed faces. And she was still its witness. Sometimes the hardest shot is the one you don't take. When wars end, the world keeps spinning. But for the ones who fought them, time doesn't move, it lingers. Anna Sharma learned that truth long after the gunfire stopped. 2 weeks had passed since the desert. The operation had been labeled indeterminate success. Command filed its report. Nomad disbanded again. And the name Ghost Viper had started echoing through places it shouldn't. She'd become a story. Again. The kind told in bars, on forums, whispered in barracks. She spared him, the traitor, walked right past the shot. Every retelling sharper than the last. Each one less true. She ignored them all. At least she tried to. She'd found a small cabin north of the Shenandoah, hidden among bare trees and fog. No cameras. No questions. The mornings were cold. the kind of cold that ached in her leg but cleared her head. She split wood, fed the stove, drank bitter coffee. For once, the only sound was wind in the leaves. Sometimes she'd wake before dawn and step outside, barefoot, watching mist curl across the field. The air smelled clean, earth, rain, smoke. Almost peace. But even peace has a hum underneath it. A pulse you can't unhear. Every night she cleaned her rifle. Every morning she told herself she wouldn't. One evening she heard tires on gravel. Her hand went instinctively to the sidearm by the window. Then a knock. 3 beats, familiar rhythm. She opened the door. Captain Rourke stood there, not in uniform. Jeans jacket, eyes tired but alive. He held out a folder. No orders, just something you should see. Inside, a printed news brief. Unconfirmed reports, Falcon killed in drone strike, warlord compound destroyed. Anna stared at it for a long time. Then closed the folder. Was it us? She asked. Rourke shook his head. No, someone else cleaned the slate. Convenient, she said. He studied her face. You don't look relieved. I'm not. Because he's dead. Because he's erased. Rourke leaned against the railing, exhaling smoke into the cold. You did the right thing out there, Anna. Did I? You showed mercy. She looked at the horizon. Mercy's easy, living with it is. Silence stretched between them, the kind soldiers share when words feel too heavy. Finally he said, they offered me command of the new Nomad unit. She nodded, congratulations. They asked if I wanted you on it. Her eyes stayed on the trees. And what did you say? I said no. That caught her off guard. She turned. He smiled sadly. You deserve to rest. The world will always have another mission, but it doesn't need to have you. She breathed out slowly. You'll regret that. Maybe, he said, but I'll remember you the right way, as the one who reminded us when to stop. He left the folder on the porch, saluted quietly, and drove away. The taillights vanished down the dirt road, swallowed by fog. That night Anna sat by the fire, staring at the flames until they blurred. Her leg throbbed. Her hands shook. Not from fear, from memory. She thought of Madsen's salute. Of Diaz's voice over the radio. Of Falcon disappearing into the smoke. All of them, fragments of a story that would never make it to the newsreels. She reached into her jacket and pulled out the folded envelope marked classified. The ink had faded. The seal broken. She fed it to the fire. The paper curled, blackened, and turned to ash. The next morning, she walked down to the creek behind the cabin. The water was icy, alive. She crouched, letting it run through her fingers. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the weight of the rifle on her shoulder. Just the ache of a body learning how to live again. She watched the current carry away specks of ash from last night's fire. Maybe that's all any of us are, she thought, ash in motion. A week later, she received a letter. No return address. Just a single line inside. Because of you, 3 soldiers went home, that's enough. D. No signature, but she knew. Diaz. She smiled, small, real. That night she took the letter outside and pinned it to the old tree near her porch, not as a trophy, but as proof. Proof that mercy could leave ripples longer than bullets ever could. Winter turned to spring. The limp softened. The nightmares didn't. But they came slower now, like old friends visiting instead of enemies returning. Some nights she'd dream of the mountain, the snow, the rifle, the sunrise. But the dream always ended before the gunfire. Just light on the peaks. Just silence. Months passed. She kept to herself, wrote sometimes. Notes, fragments, not memoirs, she hated that word. Just pieces of truth she didn't want the world to forget. She never signed them, She just wrote 2 words at the bottom of each page. For the ones who stayed. One afternoon, a local hiker came down the trail out of breath, carrying a broken compass. "Ma'am, you know the way back to the main road?" he asked. She smiled, pointed. "Follow the creek till it bends east. You'll see the fence line." He nodded, thanking her, then hesitated. You ex-military." She raised an eyebrow. "What makes you think that?" "The way you move," he said, "and the rifle over your door." She almost laughed. "Old habits." He grinned. "My brother in the service. They tell stories about a sniper, a woman, some legend called Ghost Viper. You ever hear of her?" Anna paused, then shook her head. "Stories get things wrong." "Yeah," he said, "but sometimes they keep people brave." He waved and walked off. Anna watched him go, a small smile lingering. That night, she sat on the porch under a sky full of stars. No radio, no orders. Just the sound of the world breathing. Somewhere far away, new wars were starting. Different names, same grief. She knew she'd never outrun it completely. The ghosts would always find her. But now, when they came, she'd let them sit beside her a while. Not as tormentors, as reminders. She poured 2 cups of coffee, set one on the step beside her, and whispered into the dark. "Rest easy." The wind moved through the trees, soft and kind. Inside, on her desk, sat a single envelope she hadn't opened yet. No markings, just her name written in pencil. She tore it open. Inside, a medal, bronze scratched unpolished. And a note unsigned. For actions above and beyond, for restraint when vengeance was easy. She set it down gently, then turned the medal over. On the back, someone had engraved 4 words. "Dignity doesn't speak, acts." She traced them with her thumb, the metal cold against her skin. Outside, the first light of dawn brushed the horizon. The same light she'd seen over the mountains, over the desert, over every place that had tried to break her. She stood, shoulders straight, breath steady. There would be no parade. No speech. No legend etched in stone. Just a woman, a scar, and the quiet grace of still being here. She whispered into the wind, almost smiling. Once a ghost, always human. And as the sun rose, she walked back inside, into whatever life waited beyond war. Because sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do is not pull the trigger, not disappear into myth, but simply choose to live. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.